Hello and welcome to 99.1 WIUX LP Bloomington. My name is Connor Wright.
I'm Gavin Gorski.
And you're listening to GavCon 5. And today we're here with Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator for the City of Bloomington, Hank Duncan.
Connor, Gavin, it's great to be here.
Thanks for being on the
Yeah,
show.
thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, of course. My name is Hank Duncan. As Connor said, I am the Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator for the City of Bloomington. Previously, I was the Little 500 Race Director for the IU Foundation.
Sweet. And we want to get into both of those topics. I think we're going to try and split the show up, maybe talk a little 5 the first half, and then get into some Bloomington city government talk.
Sounds
hopefully.
great. I'm excited to talk all things bike ped and Little 5 with y'all.
Sweet. First off, I just wanted to ask, how did you first hear about and become interested in the Little 500?
First hearing about Little 500, that is a great question. It had to have been back in middle or high school. I grew up in southern Indiana, down by Louisville, Kentucky, and I've been into cycling my entire life. Used to watch the Tour de France every summer and loved it. And I remember the moment when I first really learned about Little 500 was I think, a sophomore, junior in high school, and I was flipping through the channels on one spring afternoon, and I saw this oval track cycling race on TV, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. And I sat down and watched the entire race from start to finish, and it was the 2014 race, and if anybody's watched that race, you know that ending was one of the most incredible in history, and that got me hooked. So when I ended up choosing IU to go to college, and that first week just walking around trying to see what clubs, organizations I wanted to join, I knew that I wanted to get into this community.
Yeah, and you saw a sign for Forest Cycling, is that correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. I had no idea about this whole recruiting process that some teams have. I was a little baby freshman walking around Dunn Meadow at the student involvement fair, and I see a booth with a bike in front of it and a tree next to it, and thought, well, I like bikes, so I went up and signed my name down, and that's how I joined Forest Cycling.
Sweet. I know that you were part of Forest, both kind of like student coaching role your first 2 years, and then you raced your junior and senior year. What did you like about each aspect of the team, the race?
Yeah, so my first 2 years in Forest, I got into a couple nasty bike wrecks my freshman year, and so I thought, look, I need to take a bit of a break from this and also just explore what else IU has to offer. Riding all 4 years for Little 500 is an incredible commitment. I admire anybody who does it, but you are jumping into the deep end so early, and I wasn't ready to do that. I wanted to explore other things like WIUX, sports analytics, things like that. And student coaching was a great way to dip my toes in the water to Little 500, but still have the time to explore other aspects of the university. With student coaching, I love the stats, the numbers, the analytics behind sports, scouting other teams, what makes teams good, and that's what I went into and tracked our workouts, tracked times, and compared it to other teams. And did we get a real edge? I don't know, but I learned some stuff from it. In terms of my riding career for Forest, my junior and senior year, you don't really understand the Little 500 experience until you are there on race day, listening to Back Home Again in Indiana, and getting on that bike for the first time with the crowd cheering your name. That is, and always will be, an unforgettable experience that I wish everybody at IU would have the chance to experience.
Cool. What were some of those metrics you would look at?
So I created a regression model. I did not expect to go too deep into this today, but this is great. This is my nerdy little niche subject. So before every race in Little 500, we have a spring series, which has a combination of qualifications, individual time trials, team pursuit, and missing out. Each event determines a different factor of a strength of your team, whether it's sprinting or depth or long-term power. It's something different. And when you combine those and use the different metrics that you get, the results, the times, how deep a team is from all those metrics, you can combine them and get a nice aggregate strength level from each team and have a good idea of what each team's strength is, how they'll use it best on race day, and which riders to look out for.
Huh, that's really interesting, actually. Oh, God.
Were you kind of able to predict which teams were going to be near the top and
Yes.
kind of close to the podium?
Yes. So the model predicted it just based on the data.
Yeah.
And using that data, then I would use my race knowledge of, okay, we know that there might be a tier of 2 or 3 teams that are above everybody else. So we know that those are the teams that don't want other teams to be there at the end. They're going to make longer moves, not maybe not wait for the sprint finish, but go at maybe lap 150 or 160, try to spread it out a little bit. And with that, you can kind of predict how the race is going to shape out. And from there, you can see, well, this team has a great sprinter, but they don't have a good third or fourth rider, so they might fall off before all this happens, so I might rank them a little bit lower than what the actual model had them finishing.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Huh. I know, like, qualifications is the only spring series event that has exchanges.
Yeah, so qualifications, in terms of a watchable event for fans, I would argue that's the most fun event of the year. You have every team going back to back to back, and each team has 4 riders riding 1 lap at a time with an exchange in between each lap. That is just pure excitement. And as a rider, you're going out there and you're riding for 35 seconds, and that's it. You were just putting it all on the table, and it's kind of a do or die situation. As we saw this year, there were 39 teams qualifying for 33 spots. You know, at the end of the day, there are 6 teams that are going to go home unhappy.
Yeah. And we saw this year, one of the teams that should have made it, Black Key Bulls, faulted on all 3 of their exchanges and unfortunately did not make the race. And, I mean, what were your thoughts on that, if you want to speak about it?
Yeah.
That was shocking, to say the least. Black Key Bulls, since their inception in the late 2000s, they have been a top-tier team every single year. They recruit, they rebuild, they are at the top of the heap every single year, and this year was no different. They had the number 1 individual time trials from Gavin Good coming back for a 5th year to win the race. You have 2 other top 10 ITTers, and you have the Riders Council president on your team as well, and a top 20 rider. That has the makings for experience, strength, and depth. Those are the 3 things that you need to win this race. The 4th thing, though, that some people forget are exchanges. If you can't exchange, you can't win this race. And we saw in qualifications, if you can't exchange, you can't be in the race. That is the lowest bar to actually get into the race, and everybody knows that. And if you can't do it, I'm sorry, but that's the name of the game. So I feel bad for those riders because they train so hard, they work so hard to race in April. I just hope that it fuels them for next year. It is a shocking and humbling experience that I genuinely hope it puts a fire underneath that team for next year and comes back with a fury to maybe get that pole position in quals and get back into the race and get a podium.
Yeah. I think they'll be back for sure. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Shifting a little bit past Little 5, I've heard you've done some cycling abroad in France. You worked for a tourism company.
Yes, I did.
What was that like?
That was an incredible experience. Good research, by the way. So, yeah, I had the opportunity to go out and work for a cycling tourism company out in southern France for 2 different summers. Most of what I did was in the office, just working on logistics and analytics there, but they also partnered with the Tour de France in that we guided trips within the tour. So we would have maybe an Alps trip where we would go up Mont Ventoux or Alpe d'Huez or something, but we know that the Tour de France is coming there anytime, and we would coordinate that tour to have a couple of the days be on tour stages in that area. So if the Tour de France were finishing on up Alpe d'Huez or a famous climb over there, we would make sure that our tour was there for that. We would climb up the mountain with all the fans off to the side, just partying throughout the day. That's a mountain with about 100,000 fans on there. And You're climbing up, people are going crazy, get up to the top, celebrate, come back down a couple miles to your little picnic spot, wait a few hours, and watch the pros go through as well. So just getting to be over there, getting that experience, and seeing the enjoyment from our guests of they know that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And for me, that was also once in a lifetime opportunity. Just absolutely incredible experience. I am so thankful that I got to do that.
That's really cool.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound awesome.
What were some of those toughest climbs?
Oh man, that is a great question. So one of the coolest and scariest experiences I had up a climb was, it was not when I was guiding a trip, but I went out with another guide who was just picking up some equipment from another trip, and we were going up Mont Ventoux, which is, if you know it, it's one of the most legendary climbs in France. The Tour de France goes up it every few years. It is this bald moonscape of a mountain that is incredibly windy. Ventoux means windy. So once you get above the tree line, there are winds just pushing you around every which way. And we got to the base of it at about 5:30 in the morning and went up. And about halfway through, the person who was with me had to go back down and pick up the equipment. But he said, "Go on, do your thing. I'll meet you back at the bottom."
Yeah.
So I'm going up there at about 6:30 in the morning, only one up there. The sun's just coming up, and there is just this dense pea soup fog around me. I can't see anything at all. The wind is just pushing me left and right and trying to push me off the road. And just before you get to the actual summit, you approach this pass. So there are no barriers by you, no mountain wall, and that's where the wind pushed me off my bike into this little gravel ditch to the side. And when I got off the bike actually got some air and tried to fly away a little bit. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is absolutely crazy. I might die up here. I need to get back down ASAP. So I did not reach the summit. It was about maybe a half mile away. It was right there. But I thought, look, I'll do it another time, which I did. But when I just came down, I came back down and was just white knuckling that descent, just trying to break all the way through. But that was one of the most incredible cycling moments of my life, in that I can't see anything. There's fog around me. I'm the only one up here, and this wind is incredible.
That's crazy. Well,
Wow.
glad you made it back down safely.
Of course.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing about cycling is, even when you have bad or terrifying experiences, it's always a story. And that's what cycling is. You just want to have the best story out there.
It's true. It's true about a lot of things, I think. All the hikers and climbers come back with like ridiculous things. Like
Absolutely.
that. And they're like, it's fine. It's just a great story now.
I know you also worked at a bike shop in Asheville, North Carolina.
I did. Yeah, that actually came about very serendipitously. Right, so I graduated from IU in the spring of 2019, and that summer I went back to France to guide bike trips. I came back to the U.S. that fall around September, and I immediately applied to the Peace Corps. It was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to travel some more. I wanted to help society, and I got accepted, but the departure date was in April 2020. So I'm sure you could read the writing on the wall there, but I had about 6 months before I was actually departing, and thought, let's explore a new part of the country that I've never been to before. Nature's great, biking's great. Asheville, why not?
Yeah.
Made some friends there, got a part-time job down there, was a lot of fun, and about a month before I was set to depart for the Peace Corps, the world stops. And I think, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in Asheville, North Carolina with nothing to do. Obviously, I lost that part-time job. There's nothing going on. I thought, what am I doing with my life? I just graduated college and now I'm unemployed, less than a year out of college, and I don't know really what my plan is. And so I thought, well, what do I like to do? I like to bike. So I went to a local bike shop and was just looking at bikes to eventually buy or fix up, and I saw they had a now hiring sign at the door and thought, well, let's check it out. So I checked it out. They said, all right, tell me what you know. I got the job the next day, became their lead salesman, and worked there for the next year.
Wow. I know that during COVID too, it was like a big boom for bikes.
That
What
was
that like?
absolutely crazy. So I came in about a month and a half after COVID hit, so in early May, and it was right as the bike boom started, and nobody knew how to deal with it. Absolutely nobody. There were so many people coming in wanting bikes, and obviously the supply chain had just shut down, so we weren't getting bikes, and we were trying to make it work of, oh my gosh, we have hundreds of people wanting bikes that we don't have. How do we do this when we can't get bikes for another 6 months to a year? And it was just trying to control it. It was genuinely controlled chaos for that entire time I was there. I love that people are getting on bikes. I love that people are getting outdoors and exploring what cycling is like. But oh my gosh, from a logistic perspective, it was horrid.
So how did you end up dealing with that? Because I assume you were never able to get bikes. So how did you deal with people who weren't able to find bikes that they wanted?
So the good thing about our shop is that our primary manufacturer was Giant. So we sold a lot of Giant bikes. Mm-hmm. Giant is actually the biggest producer of bikes in the world. They have the biggest warehouses, biggest factories, and they produce a lot of other brands' bikes. Your Treks, Scotts, other brands like that. So while other brands like Trek and Scott, they had to rely on Giant to produce their bikes, Giant was all in-house, and they actually, more than the other big brands out there, were able to pump out bikes and get them onto the market. So while we still had back orders and a low supply, it was much better than the other shops in the area. So we just kept getting customers coming our way, and they were saying, look, they can't get us a bike for another 2 years. What do you have? We said, well, we have one coming in a couple months. Do you want that one? They said, sure, put us on the list. And that was really what it was, where as a salesperson, I wasn't selling bikes. I wasn't trying to sell you on what the bike was. I was just trying to put your name on a list and organize it so you would get the right bike when it came in. Because if I didn't do it right, there are another 20 people in line waiting to get that bike.
Wow. That kind of makes the job of a salesman easy, though, when you don't have to sell anything.
It was incredibly easy. We had record sales that year, and a lot of my coworkers were like, "Oh my gosh, Hank, you're such a good salesman." I thought, I'm not doing anything. I'm just being a nice person, trying to point them in the right direction of what type of riding do you do. Here's the bike that you should get, and them saying, "Yeah, put us on the list. We'll come back in a few months for it." That was it. So I genuinely think that was logistically a tough job, but as a salesperson, incredibly easy.
So eventually you come back to Bloomington.
Yep.
For the Little 500 race director position.
Absolutely.
How did that come about?
That was a wonderful opportunity. I knew that my time in Nashville was temporary. I was just biding my time for COVID to eventually subside and the job market to open back up. I was still hoping to join the Peace Corps and go out there. I was getting emails from them every couple months saying, "All right, just wait, just hold your horses, wait, we'll get you out soon. Don't worry." And 2 years later, they still haven't done anything. So at a certain point, I thought, look, I need to do something because this Peace Corps thing is not happening anytime soon. And it was January or February of 2021, and my future supervisor, she texted me and said, "Hey, I know you were interested in this position a while ago. just letting you know that it finally opened up. You should apply and go for it. And I thought, well, if part of the hiring team tells me to apply for this position, I'm going to apply for this position. And look, this is a dream job for so many people. This race, the Little 500, has thousands of fans across the country and the world, and is known as one of the key cycling events in the U.S. I don't know of another major cycling event that has more fans than Little 500 in the U.S. itself. And to be the race director for that race is incredible. And so I obviously applied, and I was just thrilled to get this to get the offer, because I just thought of the impact that I could have on the race, the fans, and the students in it. Because at that time, remember, we didn't have a race in 2020. The community was suffering. The student engagement wasn't there. And I thought, this is my opportunity to really make my mark on this race, to make my mark on the Student Foundation, and increase student participation and get us out of this hole that the pandemic created, and make it a healthy community again.
Yeah, and what was that like, directing the 2021 race with no fans and the...
That was hard. That was a very hard time. I came into the job in early April of 2021, and the race was in late May because they pushed it back, so there wasn't as much student activity around Bloomington. And I'm 2 months into the job, and I'm running this race. There were so many things that I did not know, and there simply wasn't time to find out how to do things. I just had to do it and learn along the way. Did I make mistakes? Of course. Should I have done, or could I have done things better? Yes, no doubt. But I didn't have time to think and react like that. I just had to do and learn after the fact. And one of the toughest things, honestly, was contacting the parents of the riders, especially the senior riders who wanted to be there for this race to watch their students participate in really their final crowning athletic achievement of their lives. And they weren't able to, and I had to be the person to email them, to call them and say, look, I hear you, I understand you, but we can't do that because the powers that be at IU and in Bloomington won't allow us to do that. And telling people no in such an emotional state, that was tough for me. Because, again, I want to make people happy. This race is about community. It's about having fun, making lifelong friends and family. And 2021, it just wasn't that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like for 2022 when it started to recover a little bit?
Complete 180. That was a complete 180. After that 2021 race ended, I thought, all right, 2022, we're turning it around. We are going to energize this race. We're going to energize this community. And that's what we did. We had the biggest increase in participation ever in Little 500 for the 2022 race. That crowd you saw last year was packed to the brim. And coming in on race day and seeing that crowd just electrify Bloomington and electrify that stadium was such a 180 from 2021 when there was nobody there. You could hear a pin drop in that stadium, and seeing all the alumni come back, seeing those seniors from 2021 come back and see that 2022 race was an incredible feeling of, we did this for the students, for the alumni, for those who couldn't be here in 2021.
I wanted to ask, so the team I ride for now, Cinzano,
Yeah.
it stemmed from Team McNutt last year.
Absolutely.
One of the only other dorm teams in the race, actually.
Yep.
Didn't last for another year,
Sadly.
but what were your impressions of that team?
Of the McNutt team last year? So, as a former Forest cycling rider, as the only Residence Hall team in the field for, I think it was since 2016, 2016 or since 2017, I was just happy to see another Residence Hall team in the field. Residence Hall teams get a trophy at the end of the year, and it was nice to have some competition for that trophy. And I was genuinely excited for McNutt to be a thriving Residence Hall team, and I'm sorry that it didn't work out. I think you all made the best decision in going away from McNutt to an independent team in Cinzano, but seeing a new team rise from the ashes with a new coach, all new riders, you had a captain in Tyler Devaney to lead this team to the race. It was incredible. And sure, were you all a top tier team who's going to win the race? No, but that doesn't matter. That a first year team is just about building that experience, learning what it takes to run a team. Where do you get equipment? Where do you get kits? How do you fund a team? What's the training plan going to be? How do you prepare for the race? Those are all questions that these existing teams already know. You have an alumni base to help you out with. You have coaches to help you out with that. Newer teams like McNutt, you don't have that. You need to rely on yourselves, a brand new coach, and some Riders Council members who some are helpful, some might not be that helpful. So it's really on you to make it your experience. And I'm just so proud that you all got to the race and were able to participate, because again, last year there were 34 teams that were qualifying for that race. And I remember talking to some of your teammates before qualifications, and there was a thought in there of, we might not qualify. And to see you all as a brand new team qualify for the race was incredible. And this year, you all qualified, what, eighth? Eighth place in qualifications. That is something that some teams never do. And sure, is qualifications the end-all be-all for the race? No. But you're starting out in the third row there, middle of the third row, with some great teams around you. Guess what? That beginning of the race, you won't have to deal with what you dealt with last year and being at the back of the pack and the chaos that is the first 10 laps of the race. You'll already be in there. You won't have to work that hard at all. Just stay up there, follow the good wheels, and sky's the limit.
Yeah. I think it's also cool to see Human Wheels, another first-year independent team, right next to us, actually, qualifying ninth. It's kind of, another McNutt, all rookie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Team,
I mean, you had, I think, 3 first-year teams in Cinzano, Human Wheels, and Chi-Fi qualified top 10. That does not happen very often, and it's great to see a nice rotation from the perennial contenders up in those solid color jerseys. Because just from experience, wearing that solid color jersey in the race, that means something. And people will look at you, and if you're in that lead pack, people will respect you.
Sweet. Good to hear.
Not to build your ego up too much. Well, I think this is a good break point, so we're just going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to 99.1 WIUX LP Bloomington. You're still listening to GAVCON 5, and we're still here with Hank Duncan. We're going to switch gears a little bit now this time. Kind of get a little bit away from cycling. Well, not cycling, but the Little 500 at least. And talk more about city government, because you are a bicycle and pedestrian coordinator.
I am, that's correct.
Burlington.
Yes.
So how did you land that role after being a race director?
So I was... let's see. How did I get this role, actually? This is how. So I started grad school last fall, and so I'm a part-time student in the Master of Public Affairs program in the O'Neill School. And that summer prior to starting, they set you up with a mentor. And I thought, sure, I'll do this. Let's see what comes out of it. And my mentor ended up being someone who works for the legal team of the city. And we emailed back and forth a little bit, talked about my interests and goals. And he said, look, this position just opened up at the city. Seems like something you'd be interested in. Go for it. And it was the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator position. And I thought, oh my gosh, I did not think that another position centered around bikes existed in Bloomington. and it's in city government, which I would love to do long term. I need to apply to this. I love my job at the foundation. I love Little 500, but again, long term, what do I want to do? And that's more along the lines of public policy than fundraising. And I applied for it. And by the way, if you ever apply for a job at the city, the interview process is very slow. So if you don't hear back anytime soon, it is not you. They will respond eventually. It took about 2.5 months for the actual process to last. And then I think it was late October, I joined the city.
Nice.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think the hiring process for government in general was pretty slow.
Yes, I don't want to just say it's the city of Bloomington. It is
It is all the governments.
all
in the
governments.
country.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was applying to some summer positions with the Park Service, and it took them months to get back.
Yes. If
In
you
some
ever want to
cases,
go into the public
career.
sector, apply very much ahead of time.
Yes. Don't be like in February, oh, I need a job when I graduate, because you will not get
Absolutely.
one in time,
Yep.
and you'll be unemployed for at least a month.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, you were at the city council meeting that I was at,
I was.
and you were presenting about e-scooters
Yes.
and regulations and rules and things of that nature. What kind of work went into that presentation?
So, just to give a bit of background on my involvement in this project, I joined the city in, as I said, in late October, which was a couple of weeks after the city instituted that curfew on scooters around the city. And when I came into the city, that was what I wanted to work on. I didn't have much on my plate at the time, and I'm a new employee looking for things to get involved in, and that was at the top of my list. And it turns out it was pretty easy to get involved with it. And I started researching, I started studying things because it seemed like everybody else around me, their plates were so full of other things that they didn't have the time to really dig into shared micromobility and the issues that are facing Bloomington. So I thought, look, this is something I know I can do, I can learn about, let's do it. So it was really just a lot of academic studies, reading about what causes crashes, where are the crashes, things that other cities are doing to help these issues long term, and what can Bloomington do? Because these are not Bloomington specific issues. They are issues that are facing any city that has shared micromobility in it. And there are things that we can play off of that other cities have done to help our issues. So it was about a 3 or 4 month long process of doing the appropriate amount of research, meeting with the operators, Lime, Vio, and Bird, to see, all right, what are you facing on your side? What issues have you solved in other cities? And how would you recommend us solve these problems in Bloomington? Because they live and breathe e-scooters and e-bikes. That is their job. This is just one sector of our job at the city. So help us help us out to solve this. And then it was collaborating with the other major stakeholders in the city. You have within the city government, you have the office of the mayor, you have city council, other departments, specifically public works, who is the one actually enforcing these regulations, picking up the scooters when they're parked inappropriately, etc. And then working with Indiana University, because the majority of the rider base in Bloomington are IU students who are going on to IU campus. And because IU property is not city property, they can have their own regulations, but for conformity and ease of use and ease of regulation, it's good to have one single set of regulations throughout the city. So that was a big part of solving these issues, is collaborating with IU and seeing what their goals are, because their goals might not be the exact same as the city's in some aspects. So a lot of collaborations, a lot of compromise going on. And eventually all that time and work got boiled down to a 2-page memo of recommendations that was presented at City Council last week for their comments and questions, and will be presented at the Board of Public Works meeting this coming Tuesday for possible approval.
And what were those recommendations?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let's probably talk about that.
So the actual recommendations within there, so it delved into two main issues with shared micromobility. The first being rider and pedestrian safety. That there have been some scooter crashes in town. There have been some incidents with riders hitting pedestrians on sidewalks. And then the other side of that is parking and accessibility, where I'm sure you've walked around town and have seen scooters on the sidewalk, laying down in the right-of-way, where that is not conforming with ADA laws. That is not accessible, where we want to give pedestrians a space to walk in without impeding them. And so on the safety side, and again, some of these are simply compromises with other stakeholders. There is currently a curfew on all e-scooters and e-bikes in the city from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. That is going to change a little bit in favor of e-bikes over e-scooters. So e-scooters from April through October, that curfew will stay the same from 11 to 5, and then in the winter it'll be 8 to 5 to coincide with shorter evening daylight hours. But to provide accessible transportation for those who need it 24/7, e-bikes and sit-down scooters will be available 24/7. So there will be no curfew on those. There will be some fleet caps imposed on the companies. Right now, there are about 1,600 or 1,700 vehicles in Bloomington. That will go down to about 1,200 outside of high rider times, specifically early in the fall semester when ridership jumps up. There will be a minimum requirement of e-bikes and sit-down scooters in each fleet. So each operator will have to put out 25%. Each operator's fleet will have to be 25% e-bikes or sit-down scooters. And then I think the change that you'll see walking around town the most is the implementation of scooter parking corrals. So we will start implementing and constructing these designated scooter and e-bike parking corrals around downtown or around Bloomington to provide spots for those riders to actually park their scooters and bikes so they don't have to leave it on the sidewalk. With that, these operators have these technologies to force you to end your ride in these spots. So once these spots are available and we have the corrals up, the operators will start implementing this geofencing technology to force you to end your ride within a parking spot so you can't just end it on a sidewalk somewhere outside of the parking area. Those are the main things that we are recommending. There are a couple smaller things in there as well, but those are the high level. Those are the main things.
Right now, can you just end your ride anywhere? Like, is that allowed in the app?
I believe most of the time, yes.
Huh. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that. I thought you had because I haven't ridden them in Bloomington, but other places I feel like it's like only in like designated places. But I guess that's what you're describing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I've seen people leave them everywhere.
Yeah, I've seen that too, but I was like, how's that even possible?
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyway.
Yeah, just the other day I saw a guy blocking an entire sidewalk with one of them. And I was like, nice. This is exactly what we want to see.
So, look, we understand, and I especially want to promote sustainable and accessible transportation, and that's what shared micromobility is. Mm-hmm. You're not driving your car around town. You're not emitting nearly as many carbon emissions into the atmosphere by using these scooters and e-bikes. But, as you said, there are some problems that come with it where they were just dropped on us in 2018, and it was kind of the Wild West out there for a little bit.
Yeah.
And now we are starting to learn what to do to walk it back and mitigate the downsides of this mode of transportation while keeping this mode, because we understand it increases accessibility, increases sustainability in Bloomington, which is what we want.
Nice.
Are those e-bikes and like sit-down scooters like safer than the traditional ones? Or, yeah.
That is a great question. A lot of the data that we've been finding is on perceived safety. honestly, I think it's a bit too early. I have not found any hard studies that, in terms of crash data and how people crash, that the sit-down vehicles are safer than the stand-up vehicles. But in terms of perceived safety from the riders and pedestrians and drivers, that is higher. And I think simply because people are used to bikes more than scooters, there is a bit of a normalcy bias that it will fit into our culture better.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other projects in the works with your position?
One big thing that we're about to start right now is a corridor study on Walnut and College. So looking at that corridor, I'm sure most of you have been on it, in that it's a 3-lane road that has a tendency for speeding. And so we are starting to look at what can we do to promote multimodal transportation along these corridors. If you're a pedestrian or a cyclist or you ride public transit, what do you want out of these corridors that is not there now? Those are the questions we're trying to answer. This will be a long-term study, and short-term, I'm not sure what is going to come out from it, but long-term, hopefully some big changes will be made to change these major corridors, this major north-south corridor in Bloomington, to make it better for all Bloomington residents, not just drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. That sounds really interesting
Absolutely.
to me.
Yeah.
Because I think the speed limit's like 20 miles an hour.
Speed
for a
limit's
lot of-
25.
25. Okay.
And for some of the corridor, the signalized intersections are timed, so it will be at 25 miles an hour. But there are some spaces there where, when you don't have a signalized intersection for a while, cars can do what they want. On a 3-lane road, there's a tendency to speed. So that's really the main project that our department is starting to work on. In terms of me personally, it's a lot of sidewalk implementation, traffic calming. We are starting to design a new protected bike lane on West 2nd Street, which is very cool. So currently we only have the 7 line. So from 7th and Woodlawn up to 7th and Morton is the protected bike lane. There is a short protected bike lane on 3rd by Adams Street. And so we're looking to add this 3rd protected bike lane on 2nd Street from around the B line or College out west to, I think that's Walker Street. So about another kilometer or so plus long protected bike lane there.
Nice.
Cool. I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I'm hopeful there'll be some changes to the bike lanes on Walnut and in College too.
Yep.
'Cause they're kind of crazy over there.
If anybody listening is interested in participating in these discussions, we will be hosting some charrettes and public meetings come May and June. I know that's not during the academic year, but we will be hosting those. And next fall, I'm sure we'll be hosting some public meetings as well to specifically get student input on this. But there will be plentiful opportunities to get your thoughts in on these types of projects.
Well, you should be there, Gavin.
Well, just informally right now, but one thing I notice a lot is that people ride the opposite way
Oh,
of-
yeah.
on 3rd Street in the bike lane.
People
and
do that on every single bike lane.
Yeah.
That is something we are aware of. We have had discussions about that.
I've seen it on
J-
Walnut too, and I'm like, the street's right over there. Just go over there.
Just know we it is on our radar. We're discussing it,
Okay.
and we are thinking of solutions to 3rd Street specifically and other bike lanes with opposite directional riding.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Like, you may not have all the answers right now, but what do the solutions look like? Because I don't see how you can stop someone from going the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're right. It's really up to the rider and what is more convenient for them. But it's up to us in the city to build infrastructure that helps the convenience of riders going both ways. So we know on 3rd Street, if you're a westbound traveler, you have that bike lane over there, the buffered bike lane that's pretty safe to bike in. I use it all the time, and it's nice. But if you're an eastbound traveler, how do you get from the west side of campus over to, say, the College Mall area or maybe 10th and the Bypass? And Atwater is not the place for that, which is for motor vehicle drivers, that is the corridor to go eastbound through the east side of town. But for a cyclist, it's not really there unless you want to go down south to Covenant and kind of hop back up north, but that's out of your way. So we want to create direct paths for cyclists going every which way around town. It's not there yet.
Okay.
So long term, after this College Walnut study, we are going to go into a 3rd and Atwater study to look at the east-west travel throughout the city and answer the same questions that we're trying to answer with College Walnut.
I know you could go 1 street south and take Hunter or 2nd Street east. That's what I do if I'm trying to go to the College
same.
Mall.
Sure,
And then
but
I hop on 3rd after it becomes two-way street.
Oh yeah.
yeah, but if you're a cyclist maybe living on campus or a little
Yeah.
bit north of 3rd,
You're not gonna go all the way down.
That doesn't make any sense.
you're not going to go all the way south there. And if we think about the roundabout ways that cyclists sometimes have to take to get around the city safely, and then you think about the grid network that we have for cars on every single street, it's not equitable there. To force cyclists to go 3, 4, 5 blocks out of the way to get somewhere, that's not how we prioritize these modes of transportation.
Yeah.
So long term, we just need more bike infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, so they don't have to go out of the way to get somewhere safely, and they don't have to ride in the bike lane the wrong way to get somewhere efficiently.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sweet.
And then last question. How does the city council's relationship with the mayor affect the work that you're doing with the city council?
Me personally, it doesn't affect it at all, honestly. I am working in such a narrow piece of the pie of the city that is multimodal transportation that all these other things going on around me and above me don't necessarily affect the work that I do or the relationships that I have in any branch of the government. For the most part, most of my relationships and questions that I ask are within the planning and transportation department and within the engineering department. Occasionally there are projects that I work with environmental or economic sustainability development department, sometimes public works, sometimes office of the mayor, but in general, it's just within planning and transportation and engineering that all of the things that you read about and hear about from up high with elected officials, that doesn't necessarily concern me, and it doesn't stop us. There's no stonewalling from us being able to do our work in any means whatsoever.
Yeah, I was just curious because I noticed that your presentation was getting some spicy questions about enforcement and things like that from the city council.
Yes, you are right about that. In general, I think there is one, because it's election season. There's some posturing. There's some issues that are coming to light right now that might not be micromobility specific. There are questions on a lot of issues that have to do with collaboration, transparency, those buzzwords that you hear around. But in terms of especially the micromobility project, I don't think there's been any toughness or strenuous relationships in terms of us being able to get our work done that we need to get done. Because in the end, we're all trying to make a better city, no matter which branch of government you're in, which party you're in. We're all trying to make a better city, and allowing city staff who are non-elected representatives to just do their job and get their work done, that's the best way to do it.
Nice. I think that's a tremendous stopping point right there. Thanks for listening, everyone. Tune in next week for who do we have?
TBA.
To be announced. Okay. Cliffhanger, so you better tune in. Thanks for being on the show, Hank.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it. Thanks,
Yeah.
Gavin. Thanks, Connor.
Thanks again.
Yeah. And have a great weekend, everybody.